A SEAL can't even handle a damn radio. What is this, a book club, Callahan? Chief Petty Officer Gunnar Jensen's voice was like gravel grinding against steel. He ripped the helmet from Petty Officer Maya Callahan's head and slammed it down onto the dusty ground. His heavy combat boot followed, crushing her skull into the unforgiving California desert floor. Ag, stop please. Women like you only understand one language. Severe cranial trauma, retinal detachment likely. Risk of permanent blindness. If we don't medevac her now, she will lose her sight. The medical report. Just shred it. Bury it. And in that precise moment, from the heavens, 3 military aircraft began their descent on the base, simultaneously. Our story begins long before that fateful day. To understand how a dedicated sailor, a woman of profound strength and a guarded secret, found herself broken at the edge of the world, you need to know everything that led to this moment. So, hit that subscribe button and stay with us as we uncover the shocking truth. The clock on the wall read over 5:00. In the sterile, quiet barracks of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, a single shadow moved with practiced silence. Petty Officer Maya Callahan, a cryptologic technician attached to the most elite fighting force on the planet, Navy SEALs. While her teammates were lost in dreams of missions past and future, she had already made her rack, the corners so sharp you could cut your hand on them. The floor around her bunk was spotless. She moved to the common area, the head cleaning the sinks, emptying the trash. Perfect, all flawless. No one asked her to do this, but she did it, every single day. Waking up an hour before everyone else, taking on the thankless tasks alone. This was her ritual, her armor. But behind this relentless discipline was a wound far deeper than anyone could imagine. Maya had spent her entire life under a microscope. A very powerful, very decorated microscope. Marcus, Liam, and Finn Callahan, her 3 older brothers. The eldest, Marcus Callahan, a 4-star admiral in the Pentagon, one of the architects of America's naval strategy. The second, Liam Callahan, a captain, the commanding officer of the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, DevGru, SEAL Team 6, a legend in the shadows. The third, Finn Callahan, a colonel in the Marine Corps, a hardened leader from the battlefields of the Force Reconnaissance. People always talked. That's Admiral Callahan's little sister. You know her brother runs DevGru, right? The whispers followed her everywhere. At the Naval Academy, through her advanced training. And now here, in the lion's den. Maya hated it. It was a suffocating pressure. If she excelled, people would sneer. Of course she did. Look who her brothers are. If she failed, it was worse. She's embarrassing the Callahan name. So when she was assigned to this SEAL team, she made a vow. She would never ever use her brother's influence. She would live or die on her own merit. As Maya Callahan, a sailor, a warrior, nothing more. But by 0600, as the team assembled on the grinder for morning formation, that vow was already being tested. Lieutenant Kyle Thompson's sharp, arrogant voice cut through the cool morning air. Callahan, late again. Maya stood perfectly still, front and center in the formation. She was 5 minutes early, but she said nothing. She knew the time was perfect, but the accusations didn't stop. Lieutenant Thompson sneered, his words meant for the whole team to hear. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, women playing soldier just gums up the works. It rots a team from the inside. Snickers rippled through the ranks. The low, cruel laughter burrowed into her ears. He's not wrong, one SEAL muttered to another. It's a liability, ruins the whole dynamic. Maya stared straight ahead, her gaze fixed on the horizon, her jaw set like concrete. She didn't make excuses, she didn't argue. She just endured. Inside, a hurricane of emotions was raging. A desperate urge to pull out her phone, to call Marcus, to tell him what was happening, warring with the ironclad resolve that she absolutely could not. One part of her screamed for her brothers to descend on this place and burn it to the ground. But another, stronger part knew if she did that she would lose the one thing she was fighting for. The chance to prove herself. After formation, another trial awaited. Cleaning the gear, scrubbing the floors of the team room, polishing boots. Somehow these had all become Maya's jobs. Callahan, you got the gear. Floors are yours. My boots better be able to reflect my damn face by noon. The voices came from all directions. In the armory, Maya was alone, meticulously cleaning a mountain of rifles caked in salt and sand. Her hands were raw, her back ached, but she just kept working. Chief Gunner Jensen walked by, a cruel smirk on his face. At least a woman's good for something keeping things pretty. The other SEALs in the room laughed like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. Just then, another woman attached to the support element, a logistics specialist named Sarah, walked in. "Hey, let me help you with that," Sarah offered, her voice low. Maya shook her head, not looking up from her work. "I've got it." "Maya, this is insane. Why are you letting them do this to you?" "I said I've got it," Maya repeated, her voice harder this time, a clear dismissal. Sarah looked at her face a mixture of pity and concern, but she didn't push it. The truth was Sarah knew the score. She knew that if she stepped in to help she would just become the next target. That was the reality of this world. A place where you wanted to help, but you had to think about your own survival first. Lunchtime was the same, dinner time, too. Maya was always the last one to leave the mess hall, cleaning up after everyone else. While the rest of the team was relaxing, recuperating, she was working. The other SEALs watched. Most did nothing. A younger operator, a kid named Miller, felt a knot of guilt in his stomach. He wanted to help, he really did, but he was terrified of becoming Chief Jensen's new pet project. Another, a seasoned operator named Diaz, thought to himself, this is way over the line. But in the rigid hierarchy of a SEAL team, challenging a chief was career suicide. The senior enlisted leaders, they just looked the other way. "Not my problem. As long as I stay quiet, I'm safe." This was the team's silent, brutal pact. Everyone knew it was wrong, but no one said a word. Protecting the weak was a luxury they couldn't afford when protecting themselves was the priority. Late at night, in the solitude of her rack, Maya would quietly check her phone. 3 missed calls from Admiral Marcus Callahan. 5 text messages from Captain Liam Callahan. 10 messages on a secure app from Colonel Finn Callahan. She never answered. She couldn't. She knew exactly what would happen if her brothers found out about her situation. She had lived under their powerful shadow her whole life. The more they succeeded, the greater the expectations placed upon her. The Callahan's youngest, she must be brilliant. She'd be a leader, just like her brothers. But Maya was just human. She wasn't as brilliant as Marcus, or as deadly as Liam, or as tough as Finn, and that's why she had to do this alone. She couldn't stand the thought of her brothers being criticized because of her. There they go again, Callahan's private army, flying to the rescue. Power trip much. Can't even manage their own family. The thought of those words, it was unbearable. If they knew the entire command structure would be turned upside down. Her brothers would carry the stain of it for the rest of their careers. To Maya, her brothers were her beloved family, but they were also the heaviest burden she carried. "I am a warrior," she told herself, night after night, not someone's little sister. She believed she could endure it. She had too. But she couldn't have known how long that vow would last. The daily grind was a slow poison. The pre-dawn wake-ups, the solitary cleaning, the public humiliation at formation, the endless menial tasks, the lonely, silent nights. Maya believed she could survive. In fact, she was certain she had to. But the world doesn't operate on belief alone. And a far greater trial was waiting for her just over the horizon. A trial so brutal, so depraved, that it would not only shatter her body, but shake the very foundations of the United States military. That day was the culmination of one of the most grueling training exercises in the SEAL pipeline, a multi-day SEER exercise in the brutal, sun-scorched mountains east of San Diego. Survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. It was a blistering summer day. The National Weather Service had issued an extreme heat warning. The temperature climbed to 110 degrees in the shade. It was a murderous heat, but SEAL training doesn't take breaks for bad weather. The exercise began at 0800. Maya's primary role was communications. Her first task was to establish a secure link with the command post. She powered up the satellite radio, set the frequency, and heard nothing but a hiss of static. Zzzzzzzzz. A cold knot of dread formed in her stomach. She tried again, and again. She checked the antenna connection, swapped out the battery pack, recalibrated the frequency. Nothing. The equipment itself had a fundamental flaw. She suspected it had been damaged during the last exercise and never properly serviced, a catastrophic failure waiting to happen. But Chief Gunner Jensen, a man who had been a SEAL for 20 years, didn't care about excuses. A comms tech who can't make a radio talk. His voice dripped with contempt. The rage in his eyes was palpable. If this mission goes sideways because of you, I will personally end you. Yenzin had always despised Maya. He was a relic of an older time, a man who believed with every fiber of his being that women had no place in the teams, a classic misogynist. And when he heard the rumors about her brothers, his resentment curdled into pure hatred. The idea of some privileged girl from a powerful family getting an easy ride in his world, it was an insult to everything he stood for. Everyone on your faces, Yenzin's roar echoed off the canyon walls. The entire team dropped into the push-up position on the scorching hot rocky ground. Maya went down with them. The heat from the ground burned through her uniform, searing her skin, but she had to endure it. But there was a difference. One by one, the other SEALs were told to get up. After 5 minutes, Miller, on your feet. The young operator scrambled up, breathing a sigh of relief. After 10 minutes, Diaz, get up. 15 minutes, another SEAL, then another. One by one, the men stood up, watching her. Maya waited for her turn, but the order never came. The sun was a merciless hammer in the sky. The ground temperature was well over 120 degrees. It was a living hell. Her uniform was plastered to her back, feeling like it was melting into her skin. Sweat poured into her eyes, blinding her. Her throat was a desert, but she couldn't have water. Dizziness began to set in, but she clenched her jaw and held the position. Nearby, in the sliver of shade cast by a large boulder, the rest of the team was drinking water, resting. Their voices drifted over to her. See, this is what I'm talking about. One woman holds up the whole team. Why did they ever let them in? We're all paying the price for this damn experiment. Hearing their words, Maya pushed harder against the ground, her arms trembling. She would not show weakness. She couldn't. Admitting weakness here would only invite more scorn, more cruelty. 20 minutes, 25, 30. The order to stand never came. Maya's vision started to blur at the edges. The world began to swim. Severe dehydration was setting in. Her lips were cracked and dry. Her heart pounded erratically in her chest. Her fingertips tingled. That's when she heard the crunch of boots on gravel, getting closer. Chief Yenzin loomed over her. His shadow fell across her back. You need to focus, Callahan, he growled. And then he did something unimaginable. His heavy combat boots swung forward and kicked her squarely in the side of the head. The force of the blow was immense. Her helmet absorbed some of it, but the impact sent a shock wave through her skull. Her world exploded in a flash of white light. A strangled gasp escaped her lips. It happened so fast she didn't even have time to scream. It was a powerful, deliberate blow. A concussion was immediate. There are no special privileges here, understand. Yenzin's voice sounded distant, distorted. He kicked her again, harder this time, more brutal. As his boot connected with the back of her head, slamming her face into the rocks, Maya felt a terror, so profound she thought she was going to die. The other SEALs watched the horrific scene unfold. Miller, the young one, felt his blood run cold. This is wrong, this is so wrong, he thought. But he couldn't speak. He knew if he did, he'd be next. Diaz was filled with a silent rage, but he knew the rules of this savage game. You don't cross a chief, not ever. A few others, Yenzin's loyal sycophants, actually smirked. One even let out a low chuckle. Time to teach the bitch a lesson, one of them muttered. This is what happens when you let them play war. This was the culture, a toxic brew of silent complicity from the good men and active cruelty from the worst. Blood. It was trickling from her ear, from her nose. There was blood in her vision. She tried to push herself up, but the world was spinning violently. A high-pitched ringing screamed in her left ear. Her vision was blurry, doubled. Everything split into two. Stop, she managed to whisper, but the word was lost in the wind. Get up, we're continuing the mission, Yenzin said, his tone casual, as if nothing had happened. Maya staggered to her feet. The blood running down from her head soaked the collar of her uniform, but no one seemed to care. In fact, Lieutenant Thompson walked over. Callahan, clean yourself up. You're a mess, disgusting. The training exercise continued. Maya stumbled through the rocky terrain, the heavy radio on her back an unbearable weight. Every step sent a jolt of agony through her head. The world tilted and swayed. The ringing in her ear was constant. Her left eye, she could barely see out of it. Her sense of balance was gone. She lurched and staggered with every step. But she did not quit. She could not quit. Quitting meant a fate worse than this. A war was raging in her mind. On one hand, a desperate, primal urge to call for help. To get on an emergency channel and call her brother Liam. The thought of Liam appearing over the horizon in a Black Hawk to end this nightmare was a powerful fantasy. But on the other hand, an equally powerful resolve. No, if her brothers found out, what would happen? Marcus would be furious, launching a full-scale investigation that would rock the Navy. Liam would be quieter, but far more terrifying in his retribution. And Fin would be heartbroken, blaming himself for not protecting her. And if that happened, her dream of proving herself of being just Maya Callahan would evaporate forever. She would spend the rest of her life hearing the whispers. She only made it because her brothers bailed her out. When the exercise finally ended and they returned to base, Maya's condition was visibly worse. She swayed when she walked. Stairs were a monumental challenge. Her vision was a blurry mess. Her sense of balance was completely shot. The ringing in her ear was now a deafening roar, and her head felt like it was splitting in two. But the reaction from her teammates was cold. Stop faking it. A SEAL can't be that fragile. God, women are so dramatic. Took a little knock, and now it's a big production. But privately, many of them felt the sting of guilt. Miller couldn't sleep that night. The image of Jensen's boot connecting with her head was burned into his memory. Diaz could barely eat. Every time he looked at his food, he felt sick to his stomach. Even Lieutenant Thompson couldn't meet her gaze. But no one had the courage to turn that guilt into action. They knew the unwritten rule. In the massive, powerful machine of the military, you must remain silent to survive. An individual is powerless. That night, in her barracks, Maya lay staring at the ceiling. Her head was throbbing. Her left eye was almost completely dark. The ringing was incessant. Nausea washed over her in waves. The vertigo was so bad she could barely lie still. She looked at her phone. The screen was filled with missed calls and messages from her brothers. But she still couldn't answer. She couldn't let them see her like this, broken. The next morning, Maya got up at her usual time. She forced her unsteady body upright and began to clean. But without her balance, every task was a struggle. She fell while mopping the floor. She collapsed while trying to empty a trash can. She had to cling to the handrail like her life depended on it just to get down the stairs. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. She didn't know it yet. But this wasn't just another act of brutality. This was the first tremor of an earthquake, an event that would not only change her life forever, but would send a shock wave through the entire United States Armed Forces. The gears of fate had begun to turn. And now nothing could stop them. The goddess of vengeance was preparing to spread her wings. A week passed. Maya's condition didn't improve. It got worse. The vision in her left eye was nearly gone. A trickle of blood still seeped from her ear. She stumbled with every step, and severe vertigo made it difficult to even stand upright. Maya tried to endure it all in silence, but her body was at its breaking point. Finally, a few of her teammates took her to the base infirmary. It would be more accurate to say they dragged her there. The medic on duty, a young lieutenant named Dr. Evans, began his examination. "When did this start?" he asked, his tone professional but concerned. "A few days ago," Maya lied. "And how did you get injured?" Maya hesitated. Tell the truth, or lie. The conflict tore at her. In the end, fear won. I fell during a training exercise. It was a lie, but the truth was too dangerous. Dr. Evans began a more thorough examination. He checked her pupillary response, the inside of her ear canal, the extent of the trauma to her head. As he worked, his expression grew more and more grim. "This is serious," he said, his voice low. "Your eardrum is ruptured. There's damage to the retina. And this head trauma isn't from a simple fall. This was a severe impact." His face went pale. "You're at risk of going blind in that eye. We need to get you to a major hospital, now." He couldn't believe an injury this severe had been left untreated for so long. But Maya just shook her head. "No, I'm fine. I don't want to be transferred." "Why not?" Dr. Evans asked, bewildered. "Petty officer, in my medical opinion, your condition is critical." "I'm fine," she repeated, her voice laced with desperation. She knew that a transfer to a hospital would mean questions. An investigation. Everything would come out. Her brothers would find out, the team would be torn apart, and the retaliation she would face, it was unthinkable. But the real reason was more complex. She still wanted to prove herself. She wanted to overcome this on her own. As Maya Callahan, not as the Admiral's sister. All her life, she had heard the whispers. She got into the academy because of her family. Her assignment to Coronado was a favor. Must be nice to be a Callahan. She hated it. She had to show them, to show herself that she could make it without leaning on anyone, even if it destroyed her in the process. Dr. Evans sighed. All right, but I'm writing a formal diagnosis. At the very least, we need to have this on record, so you can get proper treatment later. But just as he started typing, the door to the infirmary swung open. Lieutenant Commander Eric Wallace, the team's commanding officer, strode in. What's going on here, Doc? He demanded. Sir, I'm filing a medical report, Dr. Evans replied. A report? Wallace's eyes narrowed. On whose authority? Sir, the patient's condition is critical. She needs an immediate medical evacuation. Wallace snatched the tablet from Dr. Evans' hands. He read the diagnosis, and then he deleted the file. What are you doing? Evans cried out, horrified. Are you trying to get us all investigated? Wallace hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. One report from you could bring this entire team down. Do you understand that? The last flicker of hope for Maya vanished. Sir, this is my medical judgment, Evans protested. Shut up, Wallace snapped. You don't know anything. He turned to Maya, his eyes cold as ice. You will keep your mouth shut. You will not cause any more trouble. Is that understood? Maya lowered her head. Yes, sir. There was no fight left in her. No will to resist. Is that understood, Petty Officer? Wallace repeated, his voice menacing. Yes, sir. I'm sure it is, he said, a final, chilling note of confirmation. After Wallace left, a heavy silence fell over the infirmary. Dr. Evans looked at Maya with pity. Are you really going to be okay? Yes, she whispered. I'm fine. But she wasn't fine, not at all. Now she was truly completely alone. A few days later, Sarah, the logistics specialist, approached her again. You look like a ghost, Maya. Let's go to the hospital, off base. Maya refused. I'm fine. Sarah had known for a long time that something was wrong. She'd heard Maya's quiet groans of pain in the barracks at night. She'd seen her crying alone in the bathroom. She'd watched her hands tremble as she tried to pick up a dropped tray in the mess hall. She had seen it all, but she had been too afraid to intervene. She was a woman in a man's world, too. She knew that trying to help Maya would just paint a target on her own back. Every night, Sarah's conscience ate at her. The desire to help fought a losing battle against the instinct for self-preservation. And now, when she finally found the courage to reach out, it was too late. Maya had already locked the door to her heart. You're not fine. Look at your eye, Sarah pleaded. Maya finally snapped. I said I'm fine, she screamed, her voice cracking. Sarah recoiled, stunned. Okay, I'm sorry, she stammered. If you say you're fine, then you're fine. It was a bitter moment. It was the moment Sarah finally gave up. That day at lunch, as Maya was carrying her tray out of the mess hall, she walked straight into a support pillar. Her blurred vision had failed her. The tray clattered to the floor, food and drink spilling everywhere. Chief Jensen didn't miss a beat. He pulled out his phone and started recording. Gotta post this on the team chat, he said, laughing. This is gold. His voice boomed across the silent mess hall. Look at this. Can't even see where she's going. Starting a new video series, The Blind Seal. A few of the other SEALs started laughing with him. Maya knelt on the floor, trying to clean up the mess. Her vision was so bad she could barely see the food she was trying to pick up. The hearts of the other men in the room were a complicated mess. Miller clenched his fists under the table. He wanted to get up, to help her, to smash Jensen's phone, but his feet felt like they were nailed to the floor. Diaz turned his head away. He couldn't bear to watch. Another senior operator just got up and left. He couldn't handle the guilt. That night, the team's private chat group exploded. Women are a cancer in the teams. She's ruining the whole unit's morale. This is what we have to deal with because of her. Just get her discharged already. The video of Maya stumbling was shared, mocked, and forwarded to other chat groups. A torrent of humiliation and abuse followed. Not everyone participated. Many felt deeply uncomfortable, but they lacked the courage to voice that discomfort. The next day, Maya was walking down a flight of stairs. She misjudged a step. Her balance gave out, and she tumbled, head over heels, all the way to the bottom. Blood streamed from a fresh cut on her head. Her consciousness flickered. A senior NCO, Master Chief Petty Officer Bainbridge, found her. "Hey," he yelled, "get a corpsman now." Dr. Evans came running. They rushed Maya back to the infirmary. This time, it was critical. Dr. Evans knew he had to act. This time, he would not be silenced. He sat down at his computer and began to write an emergency medical report. He had to report this. He had to. He addressed the report to the base medical command. But as he was typing in the recipient, a fateful error occurred. The system's autocomplete function suggested a different address. Instead of the base medical command, the recipient was changed to a high-level distribution list, a list for Special Operations Command. And the report was sent directly to Captain Liam Reaper Callahan, Maya's second brother. Dr. Evans had no idea what he had just done. He thought he was just doing his duty. But he had just lit the fuse on a bomb that would change everything. The wheel of fate had begun to spin. That night, late, in a secure facility in Dam Neck, Virginia, home of DevGru, 47-year-old Captain Liam Callahan was reviewing after-action reports. As the commander of the nation's most elite Special Operations Unit, his work was relentless. Operational planning, gear acquisition, intelligence analysis, counterterrorism strategy, the weight of the nation's security often rested on the decisions made in this room. And with global tensions on a razor's edge, the pace was more frantic than ever. Liam was the quietest of the three brothers, but in the world of special operations, he was a giant. His calm demeanor masked a brilliant tactical mind and a will of iron. He was respected and feared by allies and enemies alike. It was past 1,300 hours when an email notification pinged on his encrypted terminal. The subject line read, "Urgent Medical Report." Liam found it odd. A line unit's medical report would never come directly to him. His command dealt with operational casualties, not training accidents on the West Coast. But the word urgent caught his eye. He worried one of his operators deployed overseas had been injured. The moment he opened the email, the blood drained from his face. The words on the screen were a dagger to his heart. Patient, Petty Officer Maya Callahan. Unit, Naval Special Warfare Group 1. Diagnosis, severe traumatic brain injury, retinal damage, ruptured tympanic membrane. Notes, high risk of permanent vision loss, immediate surgical intervention required. Liam's hand began to shake uncontrollably. Maya, his little sister, the one he'd taught to sail. The one he'd sworn to always protect. What is this? How could this have happened? He read the report again, his mind racing. The details were horrifying. The symptoms had begun over a week ago. Treatment had been repeatedly delayed. The recommendation for a medevac had been ignored. He felt a cold, murderous rage building inside him. A rage he hadn't felt since his darkest days in combat. Liam Callahan acted instantly. His first call was to his older brother, Admiral Marcus Callahan, at the Pentagon. Marcus, at 52, was the epitome of command presence. Cool, strategic, and powerful, the rock of the family. "Marcus, we have a situation." Liam's voice was dangerously calm. "What is it, Liam?" "It's Maya." The name hung in the air. "I need you to meet me, now." Marcus's tone shifted instantly. The Admiral was gone. The big brother was on the line. "What happened to Maya?" he demanded, his voice tight with alarm. "I can't explain over the phone. I'll see you soon." "I'm on my way," Marcus said, a rare note of raw emotion in his voice. The second call was to his younger brother, Colonel Finn Callahan, at Camp Lejeune. Finn, at 42, was the grittiest of the three. A Marine's Marine, tough, grounded, and fiercely loyal. "Finn, emergency." "What's wrong?" "Maya's been hurt, badly." What? Finn's voice was a low growl. The disciplined colonel vanished, replaced by a protective brother. He was normally the most easygoing of the three, but when it came to his sister, his temper was legendary. An hour later, the three brothers convened in a secure conference room at the Pentagon. The late-night quiet of the building was shattered by the tension in the room. Liam projected the medical report onto the main screen. The silence was absolute. Ruptured eardrum retinal damage. Marcus read the words aloud, his voice a low, chilling whisper. Risk of permanent vision loss, Finn said, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. When did this happen? Marcus asked, his gaze fixed on Liam. The report says the initial injury was over a week ago. A week. Marcus slammed his fist on the polished mahogany table. The sound cracked like a rifle shot. And we're just finding out now. How is that possible? She hasn't been answering our calls, Liam said, a deep sense of guilt washing over him. You're telling me she went through this alone? Finn's voice was thick with self-recrimination. The three brothers processed their grief and fury in different ways. Marcus was a tempest of controlled rage. He, who commanded fleets, couldn't protect his own sister. The failure was personal and profound. Liam was a glacier of cold fury. His calm was more terrifying than any outburst. He was a man who solved problems, and he was now faced with a problem that should never have existed. Finn was a volatile mix of guilt and rage. As the youngest brother, he'd always felt closest to Maya. The thought of her suffering alone was a physical pain. Maya was everything to them. After their parents died young, the three brothers had raised her. They were more than siblings. They were her protectors, her mentors, her only real family. They had watched her grow, celebrated her triumphs, and always stood ready to defend her. They had respected her wish for independence in her career. But they had always assumed she would call if she was in real trouble. The fact that she hadn't, that she had been so hurt and so alone, was a failure that cut them all to the core. Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Right now, we are not military officers. His eyes bored into his brothers. We are her big brothers. We're going operational, Liam declared. What's the mission objective? Finn asked, his eyes glinting. Operation Aegis, Marcus replied. The Aegis, the mythical shield of the gods, the shield that protects. A fire of resolve burned in the eyes of all three men. They were the most powerful trio of siblings in the U.S. military, and they began to move with a speed and efficiency that could bring nations to their knees. Marcus's first call was to the Director of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS. Director Vance, this is Admiral Callahan. Admiral, what can I do for you at this hour? I need your best team. Wheels up in 60 minutes. Destination, Coronado. What's the nature of the investigation, sir? Assault on a naval officer. Criminal conspiracy and obstruction of justice. This comes from the top. Director, I want everything. Liam was on the line with his own people at JSOC. I need a Nighthawk, prepped for immediate departure to the West Coast. And I want a full signals intelligence workup on every communication coming out of Coronado for the last 2 weeks. Consider it done, sir, came the instant reply. The assets of the United States' most secret units were now being focused on a single naval base in California. Finn contacted the commander of the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing. I need an Osprey, now. I'm flying to California. Yes, sir. Is this a training exercise? No, Finn growled. This is a family matter. The movements of the three brothers were swift, coordinated, and decisive. Decades of military command experience were now focused on a single goal. Just after midnight, 3 separate aircraft tore through the night sky, all converging on the same point. A C-40 Clipper carrying Admiral Callahan. An MH-60S Nighthawk carrying Captain Callahan. A V-22 Osprey carrying Colonel Callahan. ETA to North Island is 20 minutes, the pilot of the Clipper reported to Marcus. Land as soon as we're cleared. We move the second we're on the ground, Marcus ordered. At the same time, a fleet of unmarked SUVs was speeding out of the NCIS field office in San Diego. The lead agent, a seasoned investigator named Sloan, was on the phone with her director. The evidence is a medical report. This is highly unusual, she noted. The orders come from Admiral Callahan himself. This isn't a request, Sloan. Find out what happened. Burn it all down if you have to. Back at Coronado, the base commander, a Navy captain named Decker, was awakened by a frantic call from the air traffic control tower. Sir, we have 3 priority aircraft on approach. An admiral, a DevGru commander, and a Marine colonel. All arriving within minutes of each other. They've declared a national security priority. Decker was completely bewildered. 3 of them, at the same time. Why? They're citing a special investigation, sir. They're asking for you to meet them on the tarmac. Decker felt a cold dread creep up his spine. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. He couldn't think of any incident, any drill, any reason for this. But 3 flag rank officers descending on his base in the middle of the night, it was unprecedented. Get my senior staff assembled on the grinder. Now, he yelled into the phone. Sir, it's almost midnight. I don't care. Get it done. Meanwhile, Maya Callahan was lying alone in the dark infirmary, drifting in and out of a painful, hazy consciousness. She had no idea that the full might of her family, a force capable of shaking the foundations of the U.S. military, was screaming towards her through the dark. Lieutenant Commander Wallace was at home, sleeping soundly, confident that his problem had been buried. Chief Jensen and Lieutenant Thompson were in their barracks, oblivious, probably sharing a laugh over the video of Maya. But their world was about to end. The sound of rotors began to echo in the distance, the sound of vengeance. The sound of wings beating in the night sky. The time for reckoning had arrived. The goddess of vengeance was no longer preparing. She had arrived. Midnight. The main tarmac at Naval Air Station North Island, adjacent to Coronado, was suddenly bathed in the landing lights of 3 separate aircraft. A V-22 Osprey, its massive rotors tilting, created a whirlwind of dust and debris. Then, an MH-60S Nighthawk, sleek and predatory, touched down. Finally, a C-40 Clipper, a military 737, taxied into position. The entire base was awake. Such a thing had never happened outside of a major war declaration. It was a display of power so overwhelming that every sailor and officer on duty could only stare in stunned silence. What in God's name was happening? From the Clipper, Admiral Marcus Callahan descended the stairs. The 4 stars on his collar glittered under the floodlights. At 52, he possessed an aura of absolute authority. Tonight, his face was a mask of cold fury. From the Nighthawk, Captain Liam Callahan emerged. The silver eagle on his collar seemed to absorb the light. At 47, he moved with the quiet lethality of the operators he commanded. His face was devoid of all emotion, which made him all the more terrifying. From the Osprey, Colonel Finn Callahan dropped to the tarmac. The full bird colonel's insignia was sharp against his uniform. At 42, he was pure, coiled aggression. His eyes scanned the surroundings like a predator searching for a threat. The base commander, Captain Decker, ran up to them, snapping a salute. "Admirals, Sir Colonel," he stammered, his mind racing to comprehend the situation. "We had no warning. What is the meaning of this?" Marcus Callahan's first words hit him like a physical blow. "Petty Officer Maya Callahan is our little sister." The blood drained from Decker's face. He visibly staggered. I beg your pardon, sir," he whispered, his voice trembling. He couldn't have heard that right. It wasn't possible. "You heard the Admiral," Liam said, his voice flat and cold as a tombstone. "Petty Officer Callahan is our sister." Every officer and senior NCO that Decker had hastily assembled on the tarmac froze. A collective gasp was audible. Chief Gunner Jensen, Lieutenant Thompson, and Lieutenant Commander Wallace, who had been pulled from their homes, stood in the back of the group. Their faces turned from confusion to sheer, abject terror. They knew, in that instant, that their lives were over. "She's in the infirmary," Finn growled, his voice a low rumble. "Take us there, now." On the short, silent ride to the infirmary, Marcus turned to Decker. "Who did it?" "Sir, we were still looking into the circumstances of her injury," Decker fumbled, trying to buy time. His voice was shaking. "I'm not asking for an investigation, Captain," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. "I'm asking for a name." Decker couldn't answer. The truth was, he had no idea. He had been so detached from the day-to-day operations of the teams under his command, a catastrophic failure of leadership that was now laid bare. When they arrived at the infirmary, Dr. Evans, the young medical officer, was standing ramrod straight, his face pale but resolute. "Sir, I am Lieutenant Evans. I filed the report," he said, his voice shaking but clear. He was a non-combatant, a doctor, but in this moment, he showed more courage than any of the warriors who had stood by and done nothing. "Report," Liam ordered. Evans took a deep breath. The patient presented with symptoms of a severe traumatic brain injury over a week ago. The cause of the injury, based on my assessment and confidential interviews with other personnel, was blunt force trauma sustained during training. Marcus's fists clenched. Caused by whom? The initial assault was allegedly perpetrated by Chief Petty Officer Gunnar Jensen. He is said to have kicked her in the head with his boot. A wave of pure, unadulterated fury washed over the brothers' faces. Are there others? Finn asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lieutenant Kyle Thompson engaged in a sustained campaign of verbal abuse, discrimination, and hazing. And Lieutenant Commander Eric Wallace ordered me to delete my initial medical report. He actively obstructed her medical evacuation. Hearing this, Liam's icy composure finally cracked. A flicker of pure murder appeared in his eyes. To deny a warrior medical care, it was the ultimate sin, a betrayal of the most sacred trust. When they entered Maya's room, the sight of her broke them. She was pale, a bandage over her left eye, bruises mottled her face. She was hooked up to monitors, her breathing shallow. She was a shadow of the vibrant, determined woman they loved. Marcus turned and walked out of the infirmary. He strode towards the main training area, the grinder, where the assembled staff was waiting in terrified silence. Get every operator in this command on this grinder, now. His voice, amplified by the night stillness, was the roar of a titan. Alarms blared across the base. Lights snapped on in every barracks. SEALs, confused and groggy, scrambled into their uniforms and sprinted towards the grinder. Within minutes, over 200 of the world's deadliest soldiers were assembled, their faces a mixture of confusion and dread. Chief Jensen tried to slip away into the shadows. It was a foolish, desperate move. He didn't get 5 feet before two massive figures blocked his path. They weren't sailors. They were from Finn's Force Recon Unit, flown in on the Osprey. Going somewhere, Chief, one of them asked, his voice calm. Jensen froze. Stay put, the Marine said. It was not a request. Lieutenant Thompson was in the middle of the formation, trembling so violently his teeth were chattering. His usual arrogance had evaporated, replaced by the pathetic fear of a cornered animal. Lieutenant Commander Wallace stood at the front, his face ashen, resigned to his fate. Admiral Marcus Callahan took a bullhorn. Tonight, I am not here as an Admiral of the United States Navy, he began, his voice echoing across the silent formation. I am here to tell you a story. A story about a petty officer in your command. Her name is Maya Callahan, and she is our sister. A deep, profound silence fell over the grinder. You could have heard a pin drop. 200 battle-hardened warriors held their breath. Our sister was assaulted in this command, Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion. She was beaten. She was humiliated. She was brought to the brink of permanent blindness, and not a single one of you did a damn thing to help her. Captain Liam Callahan stepped forward. We are soldiers, he said, his voice cutting through the night. But tonight we are not her fellow soldiers. We are the big brothers who failed to protect her. Colonel Finn Callahan was last. There were tears in his eyes, but his voice was hard as granite. And we are here to find out why. Suddenly, Chief Jensen dropped to his knees. Sirs, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know she was your sister, he wailed. Marcus leveled a glacial stare at him. You didn't know. You didn't know when you kicked her in the head with your boot? You didn't know when you saw her bleeding. You didn't think she might go blind. Thompson began to babble, sweat pouring down his face. Admiral, sir. If I had known she was your sister, I would have treated her like royalty. It was then that Marcus asked the question that would change everything. The question that cut to the very heart of the matter. So if she wasn't our sister, it was okay to do this. If she was just some other woman, this would have been acceptable. Thompson had no answer. Is that the standard in this command? Marcus roared. That any woman who isn't a flag officer's sister is fair game. Every head in the formation bowed in shame. It wasn't just an accusation, it was a mirror, forced in front of every man there, revealing the ugly truth about their culture of silence and complicity. In that moment, many of them realized the true depth of their failure. LCDR Wallace stepped forward. The responsibility is mine, he said, his voice hollow. I ordered the report to be buried. I stopped the medevac. Liam stared at him. Why? For the reputation of the team, sir. The team's reputation, Liam repeated, his voice dangerously soft, is more important than the life of one of your sailors? Wallace could not reply. He finally understood the enormity of his crime. Finn spoke one last time, his voice breaking. Our sister, she endured this alone. She never called us, she never asked for help. Because she believed in you. She believed in the brotherhood of the teams. She trusted you, and you betrayed that trust. The air on the grinder grew heavy with guilt. Tears welled in the eyes of many of the younger operators. They were beginning to understand. Miller felt a profound sense of shame for his cowardice. Diaz cursed himself for not having the courage to speak up. Just then, a convoy of black SUVs pulled up to the grinder. Doors opened, and a dozen men and women in civilian clothes, with NCIS badges on their belts, fanned out across the area. Special Agent Sloan walked up to the three brothers. "Admiral, we're here. The investigation begins now." Her team moved with practiced efficiency. Chief Jensen, Lieutenant Thompson, and Lieutenant Commander Wallace were immediately taken into custody. As they were led away in handcuffs, a sobering reality settled over the rest of the team. For every action, there is a consequence. The three brothers turned and walked back toward the infirmary. It was time to see their sister, the one who was finally awake. In the quiet of the infirmary room, Maya slowly opened her eyes. She saw the faces of her three brothers gathered around her bed, and she began to weep. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I wanted to do it on my own." Marcus, Liam, and Finn enveloped her in a hug, and for the first time that night, the warriors wept with her. "We're the ones who are sorry," Marcus said. "We should have known sooner. This will never happen again," Liam promised. "Not to you, not to anyone." The truth was out, and now justice would be served. Coronado would never be the same. And the echoes of this night would force a reckoning within the entire United States military. 3 days later, an emergency hearing was convened at the Pentagon. The main conference room was packed. The Secretary of the Navy, along with a host of admirals and high-ranking officials, filled the seats. The press corps was there in full force. The story had leaked, and it had become a national firestorm. This was no longer just a failure of a single unit. It was a symptom of a systemic disease within the military. The lead NCIS investigator, Agent Sloan, stood at the podium to present the preliminary findings. Chief Petty Officer Gunnar Jensen has been charged with aggravated assault, conduct unbecoming, and violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. A reporter called out, "Can you specify the charges?" He is charged with intentionally striking Petty Officer Callahan twice in the head with a booted foot, resulting in a traumatic brain injury, a ruptured eardrum, and retinal damage. Furthermore, he is charged with filming the victim in a state of medical distress and distributing that footage for the purpose of ridicule. A wave of camera flashes erupted in the room. Lieutenant Kyle Thompson is charged with hazing, dereliction of duty, and discrimination. What was the nature of the discrimination? Another reporter asked. Based on dozens of sworn testimonies, Lieutenant Thompson systematically assigned menial and demeaning tasks to Petty Officer Callahan solely because she is a woman. He also engaged in a pattern of public, misogynistic verbal abuse, creating a hostile and toxic command climate. Lieutenant Commander Eric Wallace is charged with obstruction of justice and failure to protect a member of his command. He is accused of willfully destroying a formal medical diagnosis and unlawfully preventing a necessary medical evacuation, thereby placing the life and well-being of a subordinate officer in grave danger. A murmur of shock and disgust filled the room. The sheer depravity of the events, laid out in cold, official language, was staggering. The idea of a commanding officer actively covering up such a brutal assault was beyond comprehension for many. Captain Liam Callahan requested permission to speak. It was granted. He stood before the assembly, not as a commander, but as a brother. "A sailor under our protection was brutalized," he began, his voice steady, but filled with a quiet fury. "That sailor is someone's sister, someone's daughter. But before any of that, she is a warrior who swore an oath to defend this nation. She was denied the most basic right of any person in uniform, the right to be treated with dignity and respect." Spontaneous applause broke out from the press gallery. Admiral Marcus Callahan spoke next. "This incident is not an anomaly, it is a wake-up call. We must use this moment to fundamentally change our institution. We must build a military where every single member, regardless of gender, rank, or background, is valued, respected, and protected." Just then, the doors at the back of the room opened. Maya Callahan, aided by a cane, walked slowly into the room. She wore an eye patch over her left eye, and the bruises on her face had faded to a sickly yellow. Every step was clearly an effort, a struggle against pain and vertigo. But she walked with an unwavering dignity. She walked with her head held high. She reached the podium. "I request permission to make a statement," she said, her voice quiet but clear. The Secretary of the Navy nodded. "Permission granted, Petty Officer." Maya took a deep breath. "My name is Maya Callahan. I wanted to handle this on my own." Her voice trembled slightly. "Everyone knew who my brothers were. It was no secret. And because of that, I felt I had to succeed alone. I didn't want anyone to think I was weak. I didn't want to cause any trouble for my family. But I was wrong," she admitted, her voice growing stronger. "My pride was a mistake." Tears welled in the eyes of many in the room. Her raw, honest confession was more powerful than any official report. "My only hope now is that no one else has to go through what I did. The military cannot just be a boys' club. It must be a place where every warrior can serve with honor and in safety." The room was utterly silent. Colonel Finn Callahan rose from his seat. "I am sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so sorry we failed to protect our sister. But from this day forward, every woman in uniform is our sister. Every man in uniform is our son. We swear this will never happen again." The Secretary of the Navy made the final statement. "Effective immediately, I am authorizing a comprehensive overhaul of policies regarding harassment and assault in the armed forces. First, mandatory, updated sensitivity and anti-discrimination training for all units. Second, a new, anonymous, third-party reporting system. Third, enhanced penalties for perpetrators and for any leader who fails to act. And fourth, a new victim protection and advocacy program." The room erupted in applause. It was a long, sustained ovation. After the hearing, Jensen, in his final statement before the court-martial, could only repeat, "I didn't know." It was a pathetic, meaningless defense. He was sentenced to 5 years in a military prison and given a dishonorable discharge. Thompson received 2 years and a dishonorable discharge. Wallace was sentenced to 3 years for his role in the cover-up, stripped of his rank, and also dishonorably discharged. Their military careers were over, their names forever stained with shame. The fallout from the case spread like wildfire. Inspired by Maya's courage, service members from every branch of the military began coming forward with their own stories of abuse and discrimination. A floodgate had been opened. The silent victims were silent no more. Maya's stand had become the catalyst for a military-wide revolution. Each service branch launched its own internal investigation, uncovering hundreds of similar cases that had been swept under the rug. But now things were different. Now, the victims refused to be ignored. That night, Maya's brothers sat with her in her hospital room. "We're so sorry, Maya. We should have been there," Marcus said softly. "From now on, we'll protect you." Maya managed a small smile. "It's okay," she said. "I think because of this things are finally going to change for real." The reforms began immediately. The story of Maya Callahan was no longer just about a family's love or a unit's failure. It was about the transformation of an entire institution. The hearing became a landmark event, a turning point that would reshape the culture of the United States military for generations to come. 6 months later, Maya sat in a doctor's office at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. The final prognosis was in. The surgery was a partial success, the doctor explained gently. "We saved the eye, but there will be permanent damage. Your field of vision in that eye will be severely limited. And the hearing in your left ear will never fully recover." He paused. "In my professional opinion, a return to full active duty, especially in a special operations environment, is not advisable." Maya listened, her expression calm. "I'm putting in for a medical discharge," she said quietly. Her brothers, who were in the room with her, were stunned. "What are you talking about?" Finn exclaimed. "We can get you reassigned. A desk job at the Pentagon, somewhere safe." Maya shook her head. "It's not because I'm scared," she explained, a new light in her good eye. "It's because I've found what I'm supposed to do now." In the months of her recovery, Maya had done a lot of thinking. She was determined that her suffering would not be in vain. She had to find a way to help others who had been through the same hell. And she had found her answer. A month later, a new office opened its doors within the Department of the Navy. The plaque on the door read, "Special Operations Advocacy and Support Center." And underneath, Maya Callahan, Director. Using her own experience as a foundation, Maya had dedicated herself to helping other victims of abuse within the military. The center was a brand new initiative, funded directly by the Secretary of the Navy as part of the reforms she had inspired. It was a place where victims of violence and discrimination could find professional help, guidance, and a true advocate. Her first client was a young Army Ranger, Sergeant Jessica Evans. Her story was chillingly similar to Maya's. "I'm afraid to report it," Jessica confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "The retaliation, it would be unbearable." "I know that fear," Maya said, her voice warm with empathy. "I lived it, but I also learned that nothing changes if we stay silent." "Do you really think you can help?" Jessica asked, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Absolutely," Maya said, reaching across the desk and taking the young soldier's hand. "You're not alone anymore. That makes all the difference." As the session continued, the tension in Jessica's shoulders began to fade. For the first time, she felt like someone was truly listening, truly understanding. "Thank you," Maya said at the end of their meeting. "Thank you for having the courage to speak up. Now let's figure this out together." From that day on, a steady stream of service members came to the Advocacy Center. They weren't just women, men came, too. Victims of hazing, sexual assault, racial discrimination, bullying. The problems were deeper and more widespread than anyone had imagined. Maya worked tirelessly. Her vision was impaired, but her insight, her ability to see into the hearts of the broken and the fearful was sharper than ever. She understood their pain because she had lived it. 3 months later, Maya was called to testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee. "Ms. Callahan, we've heard that reporting of these incidents has skyrocketed since your case. Is the problem getting worse?" a senator asked. "No, Senator," Maya replied confidently. "The problem isn't getting worse, it's finally being seen. The victims who were hidden in the shadows are finally stepping into the light." "What is the most significant change you've observed?" "The biggest change," Maya said, "is that these men and women now understand that they are not alone." The chamber was filled with applause. After her testimony, Maya's center became even busier. The other branches of the military began establishing their own similar centers, with Maya consulting on their creation and training their counselors. "The most important thing is empathy," she told a class of new advocates. "You have to understand why they were silent, why they were afraid. Only then can you truly help them find their voice." One day, an unexpected client arrived, Captain Laura Vance, a graduate of West Point, an Army officer. "I'm being harassed by my commanding officer," she admitted. Maya was surprised. "An officer, too. Rank doesn't protect you when you're a woman in a man's world," Captain Vance said bitterly. "Sometimes, it makes you a bigger target." It was another revelation for Maya. The cancer of abuse and discrimination knew no rank. This realization only broadened the scope of her mission. A year after her assault, the Department of Defense held a special ceremony. A new award had been created, the Military Human Rights and Dignity Award. The first recipient was Maya Callahan. The Secretary of Defense presented her with the award. "It is because of the courage of Ms. Callahan that our armed forces have begun a journey of profound change. She turned her personal tragedy into a catalyst for progress for us all." The audience was filled with the people Maya had helped. Sergeant Jessica Evans, Captain Laura Vance, dozens of others, they gave her a standing ovation. Her 3 brothers watched from the front row, their faces filled with a pride that was almost painful. "We were supposed to protect you," Marcus said, his voice choked with emotion. "Instead, you saved us, you changed us all. You were always our hero, Maya," Liam added. Maya just smiled. "I learned from the best." That evening, Maya was in her office, putting away the last of her files. The walls were covered with thank you notes from the people she had helped. "Because of you, I had the courage to stay in the service. I never thought the military would change, but it is. My daughter is joining the Marines next year, and for the first time, I'm not terrified for her. Thank you." A smile spread across Maya's face. She had lost the sight in one eye, but her vision of the world was wider and clearer than ever before. She knew that every person she helped would, in turn, help someone else. The ripples of change were spreading. She looked out the window. Tomorrow, someone else would walk through her door, broken and afraid. And she would be there to help them, to give them hope. 2 years after Maya Callahan's story broke, a television documentary aired. It was called The Unblinking Eye. It ended with a quote from Maya herself. "I lost the sight in one eye, but it taught me to see the world more clearly with the other." The documentary had a massive impact. Maya's office was inundated with requests for help, not just from the military, but from the civilian world too. People dealing with workplace harassment, bullying, and discrimination. "You went through so much," said a young woman named Sarah, a corporate lawyer. "How did you ever overcome it?" "I don't think I overcame it," Maya answered thoughtfully. "I accepted it. I understood that the experience didn't have to break me. It could be the thing that made me stronger." "But it's so hard," Sarah said, her eyes welling up. "Of course it's hard," Maya said gently. "That's why you can't try to bear it alone." "Can things really get better?" "Yes," Maya said with a warm, confident smile. "They can. Look at me." Meanwhile, at Coronado, a different kind of transformation was taking place. Every Thursday morning was now dedicated to mandatory command-wide training on equality and respect. "This is our team," the instructor, a grizzled master chief, told the new recruits. "We build it together, we protect it together, and we protect every single member of it, regardless of gender, race, or rank." The faces of the young SEALs in the room were serious. They had all heard the story of Maya Callahan. It was now part of the command's lore. A cautionary tale, a lesson learned in blood. The new base commander, a man chosen specifically for his progressive views and iron will, had made his position clear from day one. "What happened to Petty Officer Callahan will never happen in this command again," he had thundered in his first address. "If you are being mistreated, you report it. I guarantee you will be protected. If you are a bully or an abuser, I guarantee you will be crushed." The culture had shifted. Where once bullying a weaker teammate was seen as a way to toughen them up, it was now seen for what it was, a cancer. The attitude towards women, in particular, had undergone a seismic change. "She's a SEAL, just like us. There's no room for that sexist garbage anymore. We can never let what happened to Petty Officer Callahan happen again." This was the new conversation in the barracks. 3 years after her discharge, Maya received a special request from the Pentagon. "We'd like you to serve on a new advisory committee for military personnel reform," the official told her. "We need your voice to help us build a better, more permanent system." Maya hesitated. "Do you really think I'm the right person?" "Ms. Callahan," the official replied, "you are the only person for the job." And so, Maya became a civilian advisor to the Department of Defense. She attended monthly policy meetings, her input shaping the future of the armed forces. "The reporting system needs to be more accessible," she argued in one meeting. "We need to meet younger service members where they are." "What do you suggest?" a general asked. "An app," Maya said, "a secure smartphone app where they can file a report anonymously, access counseling, and get immediate support." Her idea became a reality. The Guardian app was launched and became an essential tool for thousands of service members. One day, a visitor came to Maya's office. An appointment she had not been expecting. It was Gunnar Jensen. He had been released from prison a month earlier. He looked older, broken. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice raspy. He couldn't look her in the eye. "I am truly, truly sorry." Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Are you here for my forgiveness?" "Yes," he whispered, "and to ask for it." Maya was silent for a long moment. "My forgiveness is not the issue," she said finally. "The real question is whether you can become a person who deserves to be forgiven. That's up to you." Tears streamed down Jensen's face. "How?" he pleaded. "What do I do?" "Never do anything like that again," Maya said. "And spend the rest of your life making sure no one else does, either." Jensen nodded slowly. "I will." 5 years after that day in the desert, Maya stood at her office window. She saw the world with one eye, but it had never looked so clear. Her desk was piled high with letters. "Because of you, I got my life back. I never thought the military could change this much. My daughter just enlisted. I can't tell you what your work means to me as a father." The door opened. A new client walked in, a young female sailor, no more than 20 years old, her eyes filled with fear. "Can I really be okay?" she asked. Maya smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Of course you can," she said. "We'll get through it together." Outside, a new day was dawning. Maya Callahan had lost part of her sight, but she had gained so much more: courage, hope, and the power to change the world. Her story was not just her own anymore. It belonged to every person who refused to be silenced. Her work was not over. It was just beginning. The message she sent to the world was simple, yet profound. One person's courage can change everything. Silence is a choice, and speaking up is a superpower. And most importantly, you are not alone. Thank you for watching. If Maya's story of incredible bravery touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let us know in the comments how courage has made a difference in your own life. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that matter. Your support helps us bring these important narratives to light.